The cold barrel of a gun rested against Isabella Carter's back as she stood at the edge of the private airport runway. Rain poured from the black sky, soaking her coat and the tiny sleeping boy in her arms. Every heartbeat echoed louder than the roaring jet engines, waiting only a few yards away. She had almost escaped, almost. "I don't care if you hate me," the deep voice growled behind her. "You're not leaving with my child." Time stopped. Isabella slowly turned around. Standing beneath the rain was the man she had spent 3 years running from, Damian DeLuca, the most feared mafia boss in New York. His expensive black suit was drenched, his dark hair clung to his forehead, and his icy gray eyes never left the little boy sleeping against Isabella's shoulder. Around him stood nearly 30 armed men. No one spoke. No one dared. Only the rain filled the silence. Isabella tightened her hold on the child. "You lied to me," Damian said, his voice quieter now, but somehow even more terrifying. "For 3 years." Tears mixed with the rain on Isabella's face. "He isn't your son." Damian took one slow step closer. "You've always been a terrible liar." 3 years earlier, the first time Isabella met Damian DeLuca, she had no idea who he really was. To her, he was only a stranger bleeding on the sidewalk outside a small neighborhood bakery. Everyone else kept walking. People crossed the street to avoid him. Some pretended not to notice. Isabella couldn't. She had spent her whole life believing that kindness cost nothing, even when she barely had enough money to pay her own rent. She knelt beside him. "Sir, can you hear me?" The handsome stranger opened one eye. It was filled with pain. "Leave. You've lost too much blood." I said leave. Instead of running away, Isabella tore off part of her scarf and pressed it against the wound in his side. "You need a hospital." "No hospital." She frowned. "Why?" His lips formed a faint smile. "Because the people chasing me are probably waiting there." Isabella laughed nervously. "That's not funny. I'm not joking." For the first time, she noticed the black SUVs parked across the street. Men wearing dark suits, watching waiting. A chill ran through her body. Without thinking, she helped Damian stand. "My apartment is close." "You shouldn't." "I know. Helping me will ruin your life." She smiled anyway. "My grandmother always said, the right thing isn't always the safe thing." Something changed in Damian's expression. No one had spoken to him like that in years. Isabella lived in a tiny apartment above an old bookstore. The elevator never worked. The paint peeled from the walls. The furniture barely matched. But it was warm. Safe. She cleaned Damian's wound using the small first aid kit she kept in the kitchen. He watched her every movement. "You've done this before." "My mother was a nurse. You aren't afraid?" "I probably should be." "So why aren't you?" She looked at him. "Because I think you're more hurt than dangerous." For the first time in nearly 15 years, Damian laughed, a real laugh. It surprised even him. Across the city, dozens of luxury vehicles surrounded the DeLuca estate. Inside the mansion, panic spread among the guards. "The boss is missing. No contact for 6 hours. Search everywhere." His second-in-command, Luca Romano, slammed his fist onto the conference table. "If anyone else finds him first." Nobody finished the sentence. Everyone knew what it meant. The DeLuca family ruled one of the most powerful criminal organizations in America. Their enemies would pay billions for Damian alive or dead. Meanwhile, Isabella made tomato soup. It was all she could afford until payday. She placed the bowl in front of Damian. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "It's just soup." He stared at it. No one had cooked for him since his mother died. At every business dinner, every luxury hotel, every five-star restaurant, food had always been expensive, never personal. He picked up the spoon. "This is..." She looked nervous. "Terrible?" He shook his head. "The best meal I've had in years." She laughed. "Now I know you're lying." "I'm not." For the next 2 days, Damian remained hidden inside the apartment while his wound slowly healed. They talked, watched old movies, played cards, argued over music, shared childhood stories. For the first time since becoming Mafia Boss, Damian slept without a gun in his hand. And for the first time since losing both parents, Isabella didn't feel alone, neither admitted it. But something had already begun. On the third night, Damian woke to the sound of Isabella crying quietly in the kitchen. He found her sitting on the floor surrounded by unpaid bills. She quickly wiped her tears. "I'm okay." He looked at the papers: late rent, medical debt, student loans, 3 different part-time jobs. "You work this much?" "I have to." "No family?" "They're gone." Silence filled the room. Damian sat beside her, something none of his bodyguards had ever seen him do. "You helped a complete stranger." She shrugged. "You needed someone." "And who helps you?" She smiled sadly. "I guess nobody." Those words stayed with Damian long after she went to bed. The next morning, she woke to find every bill missing. Panic filled her chest. She searched the apartment. Damian stood near the window. "What happened to my paperwork?" "It's taken care of." "What do you mean?" "I paid everything." She stared at him. "What?" "The debts." "No, they're gone." "You had no right." He blinked. "No one's ever complained after receiving money." "I'm not everyone." She shoved an envelope into his hand. "I helped you because you were hurt." "I know, I wasn't selling my kindness." For several seconds, neither moved. Damian slowly lowered the envelope. He understood. She wasn't like the people who constantly surrounded him. She couldn't be bought. That realization frightened him more than any bullet ever had. Later that afternoon, the piece ended. A loud explosion shattered every window in the apartment. Glass flew across the room. Smoke poured through the hallway. Men carrying automatic rifles stormed the building. "Find DeLuca alive." Damian instantly pulled Isabella behind him. "Stay down." Bullets ripped through the walls. Furniture exploded into splinters. The tiny apartment became a battlefield. Isabella covered her ears. She had never seen violence like this. Damian grabbed a hidden pistol from inside his jacket. His expression transformed completely. The gentleman who laughed over tomato soup disappeared. In his place stood the ruthless king of New York's underworld. Every movement was precise, cold, efficient. He fired 3 shots. 3 attackers fell instantly. Another rushed through the doorway. Damian disarmed him in seconds. Everything happened so fast, Isabella could barely breathe. Then, another gunman appeared behind Damian. His weapon raised, Isabella didn't think. She moved. "Damian." She shoved him aside just as the gun fired. A deafening crack echoed through the apartment. Pain exploded through Isabella's shoulder. She collapsed onto the floor. Blood spread across her sweater. Damian turned. For the first time in years, fear flooded his face. Not fear for himself, fear of losing her. He dropped to his knees. "Isabella." Her vision blurred. She tried to smile. "I guess. Now we're even." Damian held her tightly as sirens echoed in the distance. Outside, black SUVs screeched to a halt. The DeLuca family's elite guards had finally arrived. But Damian didn't look at them, didn't give a single order, didn't care about the battle outside. His entire world had narrowed to the woman bleeding in his arms. And for the first time in his life, the feared Mafia Boss realized there was something far more terrifying than death. Caring about someone enough to lose them. Damian didn't remember carrying Isabella out of the apartment. Later, his men would tell him he had walked through flying bullets with her in his arms as if nothing else existed. Gunfire echoed from every direction. Windows shattered. And enemies fell one after another. Yet he never loosened his grip on the unconscious woman against his chest. "Move," he roared. The command froze everyone. The black armored SUVs formed a protective wall while dozens of DeLuca soldiers returned fire. Luca Romano sprinted toward his boss, shock spreading across his face. "Boss, are you injured?" Damian ignored him. "Get the best surgeon in New York." "Yes, boss." Now, within seconds, the convoy raced through the streets, with police sirens fading behind them. Inside the lead SUV, Damian pressed his hand against Isabella's bleeding shoulder, refusing to let her slip away. "Stay with me." Her eyelids fluttered. I ruined your shirt. Despite everything, she tried to joke. Damian almost smiled. You'll buy me another one, she whispered weakly. I can't afford it. You will. Before she could answer, she lost consciousness again. Damian's heart pounded harder than it ever had during any gunfight. The DeLuca estate was unlike anything Isabella had ever imagined. It stood behind towering iron gates, surrounded by acres of gardens, fountains, and ancient oak trees. The mansion itself looked more like a royal palace than a home. Doctors rushed through the entrance carrying medical equipment. Within minutes, Isabella was taken into a private operating room. Damian remained outside. He didn't sit. He didn't speak. He simply stared at the closed doors. Hours passed. Every servant avoided looking at him. Even Luca kept his distance. Finally, the chief surgeon stepped outside. The bullet missed vital organs. Damian released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. But the doctor's expression darkened. She lost a great deal of blood. She'll recover, but she needs several weeks of rest. Damian nodded once. Make sure she has everything she needs. Of course. And doctor, yes, if anything happens to her, the surgeon swallowed. I understand. When Isabella finally woke, sunlight poured through enormous windows. She blinked several times. This wasn't her apartment. The bed alone was larger than her entire bedroom. Fresh flowers decorated the room. Soft piano music drifted through hidden speakers. She tried to sit up. Pain shot through her shoulder. Easy. Damian stepped from the balcony. He looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. You've been here the whole time? You've been asleep for 2 days. You should have gone home. A faint smile crossed his face. This is home. She looked around the luxurious room. Oh! Silence settled between them. Finally, Isabella asked the question that had haunted her since the attack. Who are you? Damian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the window overlooking the estate. My full name is Damian Alessandro DeLuca. She waited. Nothing. Am I supposed to know who that is? He turned. The newspapers call me the Ghost King. Her smile disappeared. No, the head of the DeLuca family. The Mafias. Yes. The room became painfully quiet. Memories suddenly connected in her mind. The expensive watches, the mysterious phone calls, the black SUVs, the men with guns. Everything made sense. You lied. I omitted the truth. You let me believe you were just an injured businessman. I wanted one place where nobody looked at me with fear. She looked away. I should leave. Damian's expression tightened. You can't. Why? The people who attacked us now know your face. I'll go somewhere else. They'll find you. I don't want to stay here. I know, but staying alive matters more. Days turned into weeks. Although Isabella wanted nothing to do with Damian's dangerous world, leaving simply wasn't possible. Security followed her everywhere. The mansion became both a sanctuary and a prison. To her surprise, the servants treated her with genuine kindness, especially an elderly woman named Maria. You've changed him, Maria whispered one afternoon while helping Isabella arrange flowers. I've done nothing, Maria smiled knowingly. I've worked for this family 32 years, and I've never seen Mr. DeLuca eat breakfast. So, he does now. He never celebrated birthdays. I don't understand. Yesterday, he asked the chef to bake you a cake. Isabella stared. He remembered my birthday? Maria laughed softly. He knew before any of us. Damian, however, struggled with feelings he had never experienced. He found excuses to walk past the library because Isabella liked reading there. He canceled meetings just to have dinner with her. He noticed tiny details. How she tucked her hair behind one ear when concentrating. How she smiled at stray cats in the garden. How she thanked every servant by name. She expected nothing. She appreciated everything. It fascinated him. One rainy evening, they stood beneath the mansion's glass greenhouse watching raindrops slide across the ceiling. You've never asked me something, Damian said. What? How I became this person? She looked at him. Do you want to tell me? My father built an empire. I know. When I was 19, he was murdered. She remained silent. I inherited everything overnight. You were just a teenager. I became a monster because monsters were the only people who survived. His voice carried no pride, only exhaustion. I've done terrible things. I believe you. You aren't afraid? I am. He looked surprised. But she met his eyes. I also think people aren't born cruel. No one had ever said those words to Damian before, not even himself. Across the city, inside an abandoned warehouse, a meeting was taking place. Several rival mafia leaders surrounded a long wooden table. At its center sat Victor Moretti, a man whose name even experienced criminals spoke carefully. He smiled while examining photographs of Isabella. So, he murmured, the Ghost King finally has someone he loves. One of his men nodded. We confirmed it. Victor leaned back. Interesting. He slowly burned the photograph with a lighter. The strongest men always have one weakness. The paper turned to ash. Find everything about the girl. Back at the mansion, life almost felt normal. Isabella started helping in the estate's charity foundation, organizing donations for orphanages and homeless shelters. She discovered that Damian secretly funded hospitals, schools, and children's homes across the city. You never tell anyone. He shrugged. If people know, they expect something in return. So, you actually care. I care about people who deserve it, she smiled. I knew there was a heart somewhere. He raised an eyebrow. Don't tell anyone. I won't. For the first time in years, Damian laughed without forcing it. One afternoon, Isabella decided to visit the old neighborhood bakery where they had first met. Against Damian's orders, she convinced two guards to keep their distance. She wanted 1 hour of normal life. She bought fresh bread, spoke with the elderly baker, fed pigeons in the park for a brief moment. She forgot about the danger surrounding her. Then she noticed a little girl crying near the fountain. The child couldn't have been older than 6. Sweetheart, what's wrong? I can't find my mommy. Isabella knelt beside her. It's okay. She gently wiped away the girl's tears. We'll find her together. Across the street, a man wearing sunglasses quietly spoke into an earpiece. We found the target. Within seconds, 3 black vans turned the corner. Their engines roared toward the park. The little girl suddenly stopped crying. She looked up at Isabella. I'm sorry. Before Isabella understood what was happening, the child stepped away. The vans screeched to a halt. Masked men jumped out carrying rifles. It had all been a trap. One attacker grabbed Isabella's arm. Another knocked her bodyguard unconscious. People screamed and ran in every direction. Isabella fought with everything she had. She kicked one man hard enough to break free. But another seized her from behind. A black hood was pulled over her head. The world disappeared into darkness. Far across the city, Damian's phone rang. Luca answered first. His face turned completely white. Boss. Damian looked up from the meeting. What is it? Luca swallowed hard. Miss Carter. A long pause followed. She's been taken. The conference room fell silent. Damian slowly stood. His chair crashed backward onto the marble floor. The air itself seemed to grow colder. Every man in the room instinctively lowered his eyes, because they all knew one terrifying truth. The Ghost King was no longer fighting to protect his empire. He was about to wage war for the woman who had unknowingly become the center of his entire world. The black hood covered Isabella's face as the van sped through the streets. Her wrists were tied tightly behind her back, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic would only make things worse. She listened instead. One man was driving. 2 sat beside her. Another spoke on a phone. Tell Mr. Moretti we've got her. A deep voice answered from the speaker. Bring her to the warehouse. The Ghost King will come. The call ended. Isabella's heart sank. They weren't after money. They wanted Damian. Across New York, the DeLuca mansion had become a command center. Dozens of armed soldiers filled the halls. Security screens covered every wall. Luca Romano stood beside Damian, watching surveillance footage from the bakery. They used a child as bait. Damian's jaw tightened. They planned this for weeks. One guard entered the room. We've identified one of the vans. Where? It disappeared near the old harbor. Damian turned toward the weapons table. He picked up a pistol, then another. Finally, a black jacket. Luca stepped in front of him. You can't go alone. Damian looked at him. I'm not. Within seconds, nearly 50 black SUVs rolled out of the mansion gates. The hunt had begun. Meanwhile, the van finally stopped. Isabella was dragged inside a massive abandoned warehouse. The hood was ripped away. Bright lights blinded her for a moment. When her vision cleared, she realized she was surrounded by dozens of armed men. At the far end of the room sat Victor Moretti. He looked to be in his late 50s. Wearing an expensive gray suit with silver hair neatly combed back, he smiled politely. So, the famous Isabella Carter. She remained silent. I expected someone different. He slowly stood. Tell me, what does Damian DeLuca see in you? She answered quietly. I don't know. Victor laughed. Interesting. You really don't. He walked closer. You know what makes powerful men weak? She said nothing. Love. His smile disappeared. And Damian has finally fallen in love. Back at the convoy, Damian's phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered immediately. Victor's voice echoed through the speakers. Good evening, Damian. What do you want? You already know. If you touch her. Victor interrupted him. I haven't. Yet. Damian gripped the phone so hard it nearly cracked. This is between us. It was. Victor chuckled softly. Then your heart got involved. A long silence followed. I'll send you an address. Come alone. Or the girl dies. The line went dead. Luca looked worried. It's a trap. I know. You still can't go alone. Damian stared out the windshield. No, I'm going. Inside the warehouse, Victor poured 2 cups of tea. He placed one in front of Isabella. She didn't touch it. You must hate Damian. She looked at him. I barely know him. Victor smiled knowingly. You risked your life for him. I helped someone who was hurt. No. Victor leaned closer. You stayed. She had no answer. Victor noticed. You've already fallen for him. Before Isabella could speak, a loud explosion shook the warehouse. Every window shattered. Alarms screamed. One guard rushed inside. Boss! They're here! Victor sighed. He came faster than expected. Another explosion tore through the steel doors outside. Black's SUVs surrounded the entire building. More than 100 DeLuca soldiers poured into the harbor. Gunfire erupted instantly. Bullets ripped across shipping containers. Smoke filled the air. The battle had begun. Damian walked through the chaos like a man with only one purpose. Enemies fired from every direction. His guards eliminated them one after another. No one could slow him. No one dared stand in his way. He reached the warehouse entrance. A dozen gunmen blocked the doors. Without hesitation, Damian charged. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. When it ended, the entrance was clear. Inside, Victor heard the footsteps. He smiled. Right on time. The massive warehouse doors burst open. Damian stepped through the smoke. His gray eyes locked onto Isabella. She was tied to a chair but otherwise unharmed. Relief flashed across his face for only a second, then it vanished. Victor clapped slowly. Beautiful. You really do love her. Damian raised his pistol. Let her go. Victor shook his head. No. You surrender first. You know I won't. Victor nodded. I expected that. He pulled out another gun and aimed it directly at Isabella's head. The warehouse fell completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Victor smiled. Now, let's see whether the Ghost King chooses his empire or the woman he loves. The cold muzzle of Victor Moretti's pistol rested against Isabella's temple. The warehouse was so quiet that the sound of dripping water echoed across the concrete floor. Damian stood 15 feet away, his own gun aimed at Victor's chest. Neither man blinked. Neither man lowered his weapon. Every guard in the room held his breath, waiting for someone to make the first move. Victor smiled. You've changed, Damian. Damian's expression remained unreadable. You brought half your army. I brought enough, Victor chuckled. Years ago, you would have sacrificed anyone to win. He pressed the gun harder against Isabella's head. But today, you hesitate. Damian's voice was cold. Let her go. I'll think about it. You wanted me. I did, Victor laughed softly. And now you're here. Isabella forced herself to stay calm. Her hands were tied behind the chair, but she slowly rubbed the rope against a sharp piece of exposed metal. The fibers began to fray. Just a little more. She looked toward Damian. For a brief second, their eyes met. He gave the smallest shake of his head. Don't. She understood. He was trying to protect her. But Isabella knew something Damian didn't. The rope was almost cut. Victor walked in a slow circle around her. Tell me something, Isabella. She stayed silent. Do you know how many people Damian has buried? No answer. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. He smiled. And yet you're still looking at him as if he's worth saving. Isabella finally spoke. I've seen another side of him. Victor burst into laughter. The side that eats soup? The side that smiles? The side that remembers birthdays? His face suddenly hardened. That man doesn't exist, Damian interrupted. He does. Everyone turned toward him. Victor raised an eyebrow. Really? Damian didn't look away from Isabella. Because of her. For the first time, Isabella saw something she had never expected. Regret, real regret. Not for losing battles, not for killing enemies, but for the life he had lived. Victor sighed dramatically. This is getting sentimental. He snapped his fingers. 2 guards dragged another prisoner into the room. Isabella gasped. Maria. The elderly housekeeper from the mansion had bruises on her face, but she was alive. Maria looked at Isabella and tried to smile. I'm all right, dear. Victor spread his arms. Now you have another choice. He pointed at Maria. You can save the girl, or the old woman. Damian's eyes darkened. You've lost your mind. No, Victor smiled. I'm teaching you something. No matter how powerful a king becomes, he can never save everyone. At that exact moment, the rope around Isabella's wrists finally snapped. She kept her hands hidden behind the chair, pretending she was still tied. Victor continued talking, completely unaware. You know why you'll lose today? He looked at Damian. Because love makes people predictable. He lifted his pistol. I'll count to 3. 1. Damian slowly lowered his own weapon. Luca, hidden behind a stack of crates, watched in disbelief. Boss! 2! Damian dropped the pistol onto the floor. It clattered loudly across the warehouse. Victor smiled. I knew it. 3. Before Victor could finish, Isabella exploded into action. She slammed the heavy wooden chair backward into the guard behind her. The chair shattered. She grabbed the guard's arm as his rifle slipped from his hands. At the same instant, Damian lunged forward. A deafening gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Then another. Then dozens more. Chaos erupted. Guards rushed in every direction. Smoke filled the air. Maria dropped to the floor for cover. Luca and the DeLuca soldiers stormed through the side entrances, firing with incredible precision. Victor ducked behind a concrete pillar. You fools, he shouted. Kill them all! Damian reached Isabella just as another attacker raised his rifle. Without hesitation, Damian shoved her behind him. The bullet tore through his side. He staggered. Damian! He ignored the pain. He tackled the attacker to the ground and disarmed him within seconds. Blood spread across his white shirt. More enemies closed in. Isabella grabbed the fallen rifle. She had never fired a gun before. Instead of shooting, she threw it across the floor, distracting 2 attackers long enough for DeLuca's guards to take them down. She wasn't a fighter, but she refused to stand by helplessly. The battle raged through the warehouse. One by one, Victor's men fell. The remaining guards began retreating toward the back exit. Victor realized the fight was lost. He glared at Damian. This isn't over. He threw a smoke grenade onto the floor. Thick gray smokes swallowed the warehouse by the time it cleared. Victor Moretti was gone. Only silence remained. Emergency medics rushed inside. Luca helped Maria to her feet. Are you hurt? I'll survive. Across the room, Isabella knelt beside Damian. Blood soaked his jacket. Her hands trembled as she pressed against the wound. You've been shot. It's nothing. Don't lie to me. He smiled weakly. I've had worse. Tears filled her eyes. You almost died. I couldn't let him hurt you. She looked down. Why? Damian reached for her hand because he hesitated for the first time in years. I've spent my whole life protecting an empire. His fingers tightened gently around hers. But somewhere along the way, you became the only thing I wanted to protect. Isabella froze. The warehouse around them seemed to disappear. Only Damian's voice remained before she could answer. A loud ringing filled Luca's phone. He answered immediately. His expression changed. He looked toward Damian. Boss, what? Luca swallowed. We've got terrible news. The doctors just called from the mansion. Damian frowned. What happened? Luca lowered the phone slowly. They found something in Miss Carter's medical tests. The room fell silent. Isabella looked up in confusion. What did they find? The warehouse fell into complete silence. Even the paramedics stopped moving for a moment as everyone looked toward Luca. Damian's voice was low and tense. What did the doctors find? Luca glanced at Isabella before speaking. They said it was urgent. They refused to discuss it over the phone. They need both of you back at the estate immediately. Damian frowned. That's all? Luca nodded. That's all they would say. Isabella's stomach tightened. After everything that had happened, another surprise was the last thing she needed. An hour later, the convoy pulled through the gates of the De Luca estate. Doctors were already waiting inside the private medical wing. Dr. Harrison, the family's senior physician, greeted them with a serious expression. Mr. De Luca, Miss Carter, please come with me. They followed him into a quiet office. The doctor placed several test results on the desk. He looked directly at Isabella. Miss Carter, during the surgery after you were shot, we performed routine blood tests. She nodded nervously. Is something wrong? The doctor smiled gently. Actually, no. He slid one report across the desk. Congratulations. She looked confused. Congratulations? The doctor took a slow breath. You're pregnant. The room froze. Isabella stared at the report. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Damian looked equally stunned. Neither of them moved. Neither spoke. Only the ticking clock on the wall broke the silence. Several minutes passed before Isabella finally whispered. That can't be right. The tests are very accurate. There must be a mistake. We repeated them 3 times. She slowly sat down. Memories rushed back. Several weeks earlier. The night after Damian's birthday, a violent storm had trapped them at the mountain villa. The electricity had gone out. Old fears, long conversations, sheared. Shut laughter. Feelings finally spoken aloud. One unforgettable night. Neither had planned it. Neither had expected their lives to change forever. Now, everything had. Damian remained standing. He looked at the report again, then at Isabella. His voice was almost inaudible. A baby. The words sounded unfamiliar, as though he had never imagined saying them. The doctor smiled politely. Approximately 7 weeks. He quietly left the office, giving them privacy. The door closed. Silence returned. Isabella stood first. I need some air. She walked out before Damian could stop her. She wandered into the estate gardens, her thoughts racing. Pregnant. She had come into Damian's life by accident. She had tried to leave his dangerous world more than once. Now she was carrying his child. She rested a trembling hand on her stomach. I don't even know how to do this. A soft voice answered behind her. You won't have to do it alone. She turned. Damian stood a few steps away. He had changed out of his blood-stained clothes, but the bandage beneath his shirt reminded her he had been shot only hours earlier. She looked away. You should be resting, so should you. Neither smiled. After a long silence, Damian finally spoke. I know what you're thinking. You don't. You think this child deserves a normal life. She looked surprised. He continued. And you're wondering if I can ever give one. Tears filled her eyes. I don't want our baby growing up surrounded by guns. I don't want bodyguards following them everywhere. I don't want them learning fear before they learn kindness. Damian listened without interrupting. When she finished, he quietly nodded. I understand. No! She shook her head. I don't think you do. My parents gave me love. They didn't have money. They didn't have power. But I never doubted they would protect me. She looked directly into his eyes. I don't want our child to become part of a war they never chose. Damian had no answer, because every word she spoke was true. That evening, Damian called a meeting with every senior member of the DeLuca organization. The enormous conference room filled with captains, advisors, and trusted allies. They all stood when he entered. Damian looked around the room. For years, I told all of you that this family came before everything. Everyone nodded. Today, that changes. The room became silent. Luca looked at him carefully. Damian continued. I'm going to become a father. Several people exchanged shocked glances. And from this moment forward, my child's safety comes before every business deal, every alliance, every war. One elderly advisor frowned. Boss, our enemies will see that as weakness. Damian met his gaze. Let them. The advisor lowered his eyes. No one argued again. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Victor Moretti sat inside a secluded mountain lodge. A doctor finished stitching the wound on his shoulder. Victor smiled despite the pain. So, the Ghost King survived. One of his men nodded. Yes. And the girl? Alive. Victor leaned back. Excellent. His lieutenant looked confused. We failed. Victor shook his head. No, we learned something far more valuable. What? Victor slowly placed a photograph on the table. It showed Damian standing protectively in front of Isabella during the warehouse battle. He'll sacrifice everything for her. The lieutenant smiled. And now? Victor's expression darkened. Now, we take away everything he loves. Back at the estate, weeks passed peacefully. For the first time in years, Damian tried living something close to a normal life. He attended Isabella's doctor's appointments. He secretly read parenting books late at night. He argued with chefs about healthier meals. He even converted one of the mansion's largest room into a nursery. Maria laughed every time she caught him measuring furniture. The mighty Ghost King, worrying about cribs. Damian simply smiled. I don't want anything to be unsafe, Maria whispered. You're already becoming a good father. One afternoon, Isabella wandered into the unfinished nursery. Sunlight poured through the large windows. Soft blue and cream-colored walls had replaced the dark decor. Tiny clothes rested neatly inside a wooden dresser. A rocking chair stood near the window. She smiled for the first time in days. Then she noticed Damian quietly assembling a small wooden crib by himself. You could have asked someone else. He looked up. I wanted to build it. You've never done this before. I watched 6 videos. She laughed. It shows. He pretended to look offended. It isn't that bad. She walked over and fixed one of the backwards wooden panels. There, he looked at it. I knew that. She laughed harder. For a few precious minutes, the world outside no longer existed. There were no enemies, no guns, no mafia. Just 2 nervous parents imagining a future neither had ever dared dream about, but far beyond the estate walls. Someone watched through the lens of a high-powered camera. A hidden photographer quietly captured every moment. The smiling faces, the nursery, the unfinished crib. Within minutes, the photographs were sent directly to Victor Moretti. He studied them carefully. A slow smile spread across his face. Then he picked up his phone. Prepare the next phase. It's time for Isabella to learn a secret that even Damian doesn't know. Victor Moretti looked at the old file lying on his desk. Yellowed papers, hospital records, a faded photograph. He smiled. The truth is always the deadliest weapon. He slipped the file into a black envelope. Deliver it to Isabella. No mistakes. His men nodded. Yes, sir. The next afternoon, Isabella was sitting in the mansion's garden when a courier arrived. There is a package for Miss Carter. She frowned. I wasn't expecting anything. There was no return address. Curious, she opened the envelope. Inside was an old photograph. A young woman smiled while holding a newborn baby. On the back, someone had written, Elena Carter and her daughter, Isabella. Another document fell into her lap. It was an adoption certificate. Her hands began to shake. No. She turned the pages faster. Medical reports, birth records, letters. According to the file, the people who had raised her had never been her biological parents. She had been adopted as an infant after a violent attack that had killed her birth mother. A final note was attached. Ask Damian DeLuca, who ordered the attack 26 years ago. Isabella stared at the words in disbelief. That evening, Damian returned from a meeting and found Isabella waiting in the library. The file lay open on the table. You knew? He looked at the documents. His face changed. Where did you get these? Answer me. He took a slow breath. I found out only a few months ago. You knew, and you never told me? I wanted proof first. She held up the photograph. Is it true? Damian nodded slowly. Yes, my father ordered the attack. Tears filled Isabella's eyes. He killed my family? My father did. And you hid it. I was afraid of losing you. She stepped back. You should have trusted me. I know, I was wrong. For the first time since they met, she walked away from him without another word. Days passed. The mansion felt empty. Damian barely slept. He blamed himself for keeping the truth hidden. Maria finally approached him. You made a mistake. I know, but hiding the truth wasn't the greatest one. He looked at her. What was? You decided for Isabella instead of trusting her heart. Her words stayed with him. Meanwhile, Isabella visited the small town where she had grown up. She stood before the graves of the couple who had raised her. They had never hidden love from her. Even if they had hidden the truth, she placed fresh flowers beside the headstones. They chose me. They loved me. And because of them, I learned kindness. She smiled through her tears. They'll always be my parents. At that moment, an elderly nun approached her. I remember you. Isabella looked surprised. You do? The nun nodded. I was there the night you arrived. She gently held Isabella's hands. Your birth mother gave her life protecting you. She asked only one thing. What? She said. Please let my daughter grow into someone who chooses love instead of revenge. The words struck Isabella's heart. She closed her eyes. If she spent her life chasing hatred, she would become exactly what had destroyed her family. Back in New York, Victor launched one final attack. Explosions echoed near the DeLuca shipping port. Gunfire erupted throughout the docks. His army moved in from every direction. Luca called Damian immediately. Boss, it's Moretti. He brought everyone. Damian grabbed his jacket. Protect the civilians first. What about the cargo? Forget the cargo. People first. His men stared years ago. Damian would have protected his empire. Now, he protected lives. The battle lasted through the night. Victor finally confronted Damian on an empty pier overlooking the river. You've become soft. Damian shook his head. No, I've become someone worth following. Victor fired first. Damian dodged. The two men fought hand to hand across the rain-soaked pier. Neither gained the advantage. Finally, Victor slipped near the edge. The wooden planks beneath him cracked. He lost his balance. His fingers barely caught the railing. Below, the dark river rushed violently. Victor looked up. Damian stood above him. One pull, and everything would be over. Victor laughed bitterly. Do it. Become the monster your father was. Damian looked at him silently. Then, he reached down and pulled Victor back onto the pier. Victor stared in disbelief. Why? Damian answered quietly. Because someone taught me that kindness is stronger than fear. Police sirens echoed in the distance. Victor was arrested moments later. His war was over. Several months later, the DeLuca estate was filled with laughter. Sunlight poured through the nursery windows. A beautiful baby boy slept peacefully in his crib. Damian gently picked him up. "You look just like your mother." Isabella smiled from the rocking chair. "No, he has your stubborn face." They laughed together. Maria entered carrying a small blanket. "I think someone wants Grandpa Luca." Luca protested from the doorway. "I'm not old enough to be Grandpa." Everyone laughed again. The mansion that had once echoed with fear now echoed with joy. One crisp autumn morning, Damian stood before hundreds of employees. Behind him hung a new sign, the Carter Foundation, a charity created in honor of Isabella's adoptive parents. Its mission was simple: to provide homes, education, and medical care for children with nowhere else to go. Reporters asked Damian why he had invested so much of his fortune into helping strangers. He smiled. "Years ago, I met a woman who believed kindness should never depend on who someone is. She changed my life." Across the crowd, Isabella held their son while smiling proudly. Their eyes met. No words were needed. Years later, their little boy ran laughing through the mansion gardens, chasing butterflies beneath the warm afternoon sun. He stopped between his parents and reached up to hold both of their hands. Damian squeezed Isabella's fingers gently. "So, are you still planning to run away?" She laughed. "I don't think I ever could." He smiled. "Good." She leaned against him as their son giggled nearby. The empire Damian inherited had been built on fear. The family he built with Isabella was founded on trust, forgiveness, and love. And for the first time in his life, the Ghost King finally understood what it truly meant to come home. Like, subscribe, and support my channel. I really need your support. If you enjoy my video, please share it and leave your feedback in the comments.